Justin's sidekick Pedro. Now, this is Justin's best adversary to combat me with, because this guy was so fucking lame, but I had no choice when my mind wasn't expanded but to look up to Pedro. Metaphorically speaking, that Pedro was funnier than Justin at times. At times he was way funnier than Justin, but 9 times out of 10, Justin was literally cracking jokes the most, but Pedro was such a fucking asshole. And the reason why this is a very important video is the fact that when I met Pedro was when Justin was on that bullshit trying to explain situations that weren't actually real, but he literally folded them with his words to make them feel real. So here's how it goes. So Justin and me are fucking around, and him and Pedro start to hook up, and him and Pedro literally start talking about if he should move to Mexico because he's wondering if he should play soccer there. And literally, I bust out of nowhere because I'm still new to getting to know people and shit. And so I talked to Justin, I'm all like, I didn't know Mexicans play soccer good. And he's all like, that's racist right there. And I'm all like, fine. I didn't know Mexicans especially knew how to play soccer good. And so Justin looks at me with a straight face and he's all like, then you have missed out on life completely. But literally, that shit was so dumb. But Justin came out with the excuse. He's like, look at it this way. If we weren't here, you would have no one to hang out with. I'm like, that's not really a good point. That may be true, but there's 1,000 things we could be doing besides talking shit. So Pedro added on to Justin's stupid archetype, saying that even white people are more with the shit to me because of the fact that I haven't been adapted to hip-hop since I was young, literally. So Pedro would do these moments where he would draw rubber bands on his jeans to make sure they don't get torn up. And literally just giving me examples on top of examples, literally. So literally, Pedro told me that he went out with a girl that was everybody's crush in junior high. And so I asked that girl out, and she didn't say anything. And I asked Pedro again, and I told him that I asked her. And he's like, really? Why would you even do that? There were bits and moments that let Pedro know that I was actually smarter than him, but he didn't want to comprehend. And, so here's what happened. He and Justin do this thing where they try to see like how smart I am. Like, how can you be in special ed that have regular kid tendencies? And I was actually in regular ed all into when I was in 3rd grade. So I got Justin to agree to do a fucking talent show with me, and I'm so-called special ed. And literally, so here's what happens, literally. So I don't have the same conditioning. If you actually know how the curriculum works, it's the same thing as a regular class, but it's at a slower pace. So it's like, you can take your time and this and that, when that's a really bad mentality when you're trying to compete. But the main point of it is they would ask me dumb questions. Like Pedro's like, what's a division problem? I'm like, I don't know. I literally, and they're all like, you're retarded and shit like that. And then they ask me that again. They're like, what is a fraction? I'm like, a division problem. And then Justin looks at Pedro. He's like, okay, he got that the second time. So the difference between me and them is I don't have as much conditioning, but we're literally on the same level. That's why I'm able to call them out on their bullshit. They would do dumb shit. Like, there was this one time where they took advantage of my fucking anime obsession, and they put me in a shopping cart and they pushed me down a garage hill that was literally just like 6 feet deep, not too long, but literally. So what happened is literally they pushed me down in a cart and I just went with it, and I jumped out of the cart before I landed, and my hands landed on the fence like a fucking monkey. And that shit was so funny. I don't know if they were trying to kill me. I don't know what the fuck they were trying to do. But because I was an anime fan, that's why I fucking survived. I'm like, yee, this is fun. But they're trying to make me look like a retard and shit. And the whole premise between me and Justin is I am too strong for their buffoonery. They try to pull this of mice and men shit with me. But because I was originally on their level, and because I got held back, is why I'm having these tendencies. They're trying to put me like Lenny, but really, I'm just another person in the team. I just don't have a gun. But I thought that shit was funny at the time, you know, because I'm just doing everything wild, you know, in my own little world. And that backfires when you're trying to hurt someone that doesn't feel pain. So Pedro was a really cocky guy that literally was with Justin and his friends. So here's the thing. So before Justin resorts to hitting me with a bat after he knows he can't beat me with a fight, taking me through rigorous obstacles for me, proving to him that I'm not in special ed, that we're on the same level because I catch on fast. But because I wasn't originally there, what they would do was they would say logic in order to delay physical action. So when the physical action came up, they would resort to a trick to prove their point. So literally, this is after I square up with Max Chance. This is after Elliot offers me the fight Sid. This is this and that. And so I try to come at Justin one-on-one because I caught him out before the bat incident. And I tried to tell Justin that you can't fuck with me like that because I'm going to do something about it. And literally, that's where his mom got involved. That's when literally I tried to tell Justin to stop fucking with me. And so I was in his room and I'm trying to give him an Naruto Uzumaki speech. And so him and Pedro and his friend Andre and Andre's older brother David were in a room, and they tried to ask me something like, what is your fighting stance? After I just did all this shit. And so you know what? Because I was so emotionally disturbed, I'm all like, I don't have one. And they're like, oh. And so in my mind, I'm thinking that they're hella mature. Like, dude, why the fuck would you challenge to fight us if you don't even have a fighting stance? Front facing. But back in the day, they knew I faced up with all these people. You see, they want to put logic in my head where I'm about to snap to say, oh, you might want to reconsider because the best fighters keep their calm, which is true, but they were saying that in defense that I was ready and they weren't. And they even back it up saying, like, not saying that you would lose to anyone in this room or anything, that because Andre said you can't beat anyone in this room. And in reality, I would whoop all their asses, but because it's front facing, I believed everything they said, like, oh, you're immature and stuff like that. Dude, you're just an autistic guy that can't control his temper tantrum and shit. But why would I have the confidence to do it if I'm not using logic? I was so infatuated by their capping that I forgot what the fuck I have achieved because they kept on capping and made me forget about all this shit I've done. So they literally ignore the whole thing because I don't actually snap on them. And this is a lesson. If someone keeps on trying to play this game with you, you actually test it to see if it's true. Because when I actually called Justin out for the very first time, he resorted to using a weapon because he knew what the difference in strength is. For everyone who doesn't know, what happened in Justin the Fallen is when I squared up with him, I punched him in the best vital area to beat a taller person in the fight, which is the stomach. I punched him in the stomach very first thing. He's trying to criticize me about a fighting stance. And so, literally, so after that happens, we ignore that we have this moment, and they get a clown on me because I don't resort to doing it. I take their words to heart. And so, Pedro is a god at Guitar Hero. He was literally hitting every single note. I'm like, dude, that's hella cool. You know, the devil's in my head saying, see, these dudes are multi-dimensional. These guys are super talented. You see all that coordination it takes for him to hit those notes in Guitar Hero? That's how he didn't say it back then, but basically what the situation is saying, that's how you know he can beat you in a fight. With wrong. It's about muscle memory. That's why Elliot chose me to fight Sid, because he knows that I'm faster and he knows that I can override Sid. Even though Sid has longer reach, my arms will connect to his face faster because if me and him both overlap, I'm gonna win. So literally, Pedro starts kicking his feet up in the air while he's playing Guitar Hero, while he's hitting the notes, literally joking it up. And so then we go to Pedro's house, and literally, so Pedro starts playing Halo, and you know, I'm PlayStation exclusive, and it is so funny because he is playing with all these cool ass shit on Halo. I only know what Call of Duty is. I'm like, dude, these graphics are hella sick. So literally, I said this, I'm like, dude, I want to get an Xbox. And so Pedro's all like, okay, well, go get a box and draw an X on it. And so literally, so things calm down and Pedro just remains cocky, but the truth is leaking out. I realized when I'm older that he was hella mad that I didn't fall for his trap. More or less the fact that what he said was very logical, but it was out of context because I've already proven that I can fight. But because they knew how I rose consistently, that I believed everything they fucking said because my feats were not consistent, but they were haymakers. So the girls remembered the roast. So the guys remember the roast. They remember the roast so much to a point where they have to make up schemes and try to bring me down. But I don't remember my highlights. Like this one time when I look at Pedro and I talk to Justin, I'm all like, I can't tell if this guy's Mexican or Asian. And Justin's like, bro, that's simple. But when you look at his face, literally, he looks hella mad. He's like, why would you ask that stupid ass question? He's obviously Mexican. I'm like, he has beady eyes. But he has spiky hair like a Mexican. And if you go watch Young Pharaoh's channel, he literally breaks down that when a Caucasian mates with a Mexican, it technically creates an Asian. Go look up Young Pharaoh's channel in the description below. But anyway, Pedro's reaction to my logic was so fucking insane because there was this time where Pedro was flexing on this one Masters episodes to everyone, and he's all like, hey, you know how to make your penis bigger? And we're all like, how? And we thought that he was gonna create this genius strategy, literally, like try to tie your dick in a knot, hanging on the door and shit. But Pedro was all like, just get surgery. And then I'm like, or use Viagra. And so Pedro has the audacity to correct me, saying that Viagra doesn't make your penis bigger, it just gives you a boner. And then Justin's friend Andre intervenes again, and he's all like, for a hell of a long time. But Pedro wasn't there when the bat incident happened. Pedro wasn't there when Justin was trying to flex how he went on dead, but Pedro was definitely there when we were in junior high, just literally after school fucking around with Justin. So him and Justin had the scheme that we're gonna convince him that he's less than what he is, so by the time he realizes it, it's gonna be too late. But in all actuality, I already own Pedro, I already own Justin, because even though they knew more about the situation, because I asked questions is why I won, because a lot of people are afraid of asking stupid questions. But I wanted to know so much, I was so ambitious on why they were so different, why this and that, how are they so funny and this and that, and literally I wanted to do the same because I kind of liked the way that they're living, but then I realized why they were so funny is because they're trying to make more out of the situation what it is. They're exaggerating shit in the situation, but they're making it realistic by changing your view of your surroundings, by putting certain things front facing. But the whole point of Pedro's scheme and why it dropped is because, come on, I can't be scared of words forever. I'm gonna eventually look at actions. I have all this confidence for a reason, so when I finally snapped like the nine-tailed fox against Justin, it showed me the difference between power and why I could never fight Justin, because God protected him because I was too strong for him. And he told me that this is why you can't hang out with them. It is because you're too strong for them. The board hit his back, or he tried to run in his backyard, and that's all God was trying to tell me. Like, this is how it's been the whole time behind all those words. It's either you gotta keep on trying to prove your point that they're gonna discard in order to gaslight, or you're gonna realize that it's not worth it. So there was this one time, after all that gaslighting, the first time when I called Justin out, it was bad, I was ready and this and that, but this time, Justin called me out. This was before the bad incident. He's like, oh, are you ready to go? Or are you just gonna pussy out? This was months on top of months of me calling him out on all his bullshit when I was in 8th grade, and he finally wants to go after all this gaslighting. Probably thought of a clever strategy, and he's like, are you gonna go, or are you just gonna pussy out? So I just look at him after all this times, always ready to fight him. I look at Justin, I'm all like, you know what? I'll pussy out. And Justin literally drops his lip and looks at me with a straight face and says, wow, Eris, but you know what? You didn't want to call me out when I was ready.